Hey guys, welcome to our virtual event for this month of May. Last month we had a couple of speakers who gave us a couple of valuable insights on how to effectively manage remote teams. So for our second virtual event on Product PH, we're going to be tackling on adapting your product for a post-COVID world. As you may know, the COVID-19 pandemic since the start of this year, well, for the start of the decade rather, it's been affecting various companies, businesses, and organizations, and a lot of these organizations have been transforming their strategies on how to adapt with social distancing, quarantine, lockdowns, and all the different policies that governments have been imposing since the crisis started. So for tonight's event, I believe we're streaming live through Jitsi. I think this is the first time we're trying out Jitsi, so any feedback would be much appreciated as well. And we're also live to YouTube and Facebook. Okay. So for those who are joining us for the first time, just a quick background on Product PH. So Product PH is an organization of practitioners from the product management and development space. So our vision is for world-class products to be built here in the Philippines. As you may know, here in the Southeast Asian region, there has been a rapid growth of technology, and we want the Philippines to be at the forefront of this disruptive innovation. On this note, we are also aiming to provide an open space for people interested in building great products to connect, share ideas, and build relationships with each other. And we do this in the form of events, meetups, and right now we're also pivoting and adapting to the COVID situation. So we're facilitating it through virtual interactions such as this one. So my name is John, and I'm an organizer here in Product PH. Okay. Well, before we start, just quick reminders. Number one, kindly mute your microphone if you're not speaking, so that we can have the facilitator go to her slides and go to her presentation seamlessly. Number two, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them on the chat box available on Jitsi. So my fellow organizers are on standby and they can pick up the questions so that we can tackle them in the discussion later on. And lastly, especially for the ones here on Jitsi, we encourage the attendees to turn on the video so that we can have a more personal and interactive touch, if you will, along with the speaker for tonight. But if you're shy, feel free to just connect to the call. Okay. Okay, so this has been a buzzword in different industries over the past couple of months. And even though most organizations have a BCP or a business continuity plan or disaster recovery policies in place, it doesn't actually end there. So we may know that we're, especially here in the Philippines, we're under the extended quarantine right now. But once it is lifted, it doesn't really end there. It it would trickle down over the next coming months. And with that in mind, there is a pressing call to action for us to accept the so-called new normal, as they say. And joining us tonight is the product manager from Canva, Joan Magno. Joanne, thank you for joining us tonight on our second virtual event.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, maybe Joanne, you could introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, so I'm gonna start sharing my screen also.
Awesome.
Hope you can all see that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm Joe. So some intros. I'd love it if you guys introduced yourself too, because I want this to kind of be more interactive. If you could type into the chat, kind of like, what company you're in, maybe, or like what your role is. Are you a product manager? Are you an engineer? Like, it would be awesome to see what kind of crowd we have today. Oh, hey, Phil, Casper, familiar faces.
Yeah, I think a couple of product page guys are here as well. Um, well, I myself, I'm a PM, so the others feel free to turn on your mic as well.
Yeah, hey, lots of product managers, nice designer. Oh, hey, Alexis, Andrew, thanks for coming. um, cool. So, yeah, quick intro. But before we do that, I wanted to talk about what we were gonna cover today, and that's how products and businesses are changing, where consumer demand is going, how to look at the market, and how to respond to the market. I think people here, they manage a business product or they're just someone willing to learn. So if anyone here, can get some insights from this talk and make their product or service better, I'd consider that a huge success already. I believe that education should turn into action. And there are really only two sections to this talk, and that is where's the demand and how can I grow? How can I make my product and service grow? And this is for you guys, and this is for the product page community. The product community is growing, and because it's a product talk, I'm going to be introducing some product frameworks at around the middle of the talk, so watch out for that. I was at Caliber, so nice to see a lot of Caliber people here. Thank you guys. I started there as an associate product manager and then left around a few years ago to join Canva, where I started in their mobile space. Afterwards, I jumped into their monetization and growth areas, launched their pro subscription on mobile, which was really fun. And now I'm based in Sydney working on their video product and doing product lead for that. So that is super fun too. And I love Canva video. If you've tried a product before, give me feedback. So I'd love to hear it. I also spend a lot of time playing Animal Crossing. So just before this talk, I was selling my turnips. It's a pretty fun game. And just the other day, I actually saw them selling the doctor's mask on Animal Crossing. And I thought it was a really unique way of how people connected to their customers, how Nintendo decided to have this product in their game so that people knew that they were thinking of them. And I wanted to ask the crowd today, like, why are you here? If you could put it in the chat, that would be awesome. What are you looking to learn? Casper forced us.
Because Casper forced us.
Yeah. Any legit answers? That's awesome. Keeping up to date with what everyone is dealing with. Yeah. Any more? So maybe you're here because you can no longer do business. A lot of people, because of ECQ, and even in Australia, they stopped entertainment. You can't watch movies, you can't go to swimming pools, you can't go to beaches. In supply chains, warehouses have closed down. And because of the closing of borders, flights are back to their 1950 levels, which is absolutely insane. Or maybe you don't have as many customers. Because of lockdowns, people have diverted their purchasing elsewhere. There's no demand for services that risk exposure to the virus. Or maybe your businesses can no longer afford you. Maybe you're catering to small to medium-sized businesses And because of stay-at-home orders last March, this led to rapid changes in demand as businesses and schools switched to remote work, canceled operations, and consumers canceled, restricted, or redirected their spending. And what's insane is that world's top 20 economies have actually government-mandated social distancing. But there's a lot of hope. And that hope comes from a lot of businesses who took that change as a chance. A good friend told me that this is a time where the empires of old fall, and it's a time for opportunity. Because there's nothing fundamentally wrong with the economy, everything is human sanctioned. And during an economic downturn, you'll find that you'll actually have less competition. So it's easier and faster to get results. And you can be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. A great example of that was many years ago during the SARS outbreak. Everyone was afraid to go outside, but the founder of JD moved his physical stores to an online store. And that same period, the demand for e-commerce also saw the setup of Taobao, which is Alibaba's B2C commerce platform. SARS created the perfect storm for Chinese e-commerce to change Chinese consumption forever. So we know how big of an impact times like this can have on an economy. Some more hope is the Taiwan Stock Exchange Index. You can see that it's back to its levels 6 months ago, which is great. Let's jump right into how products and businesses have changed, maybe even permanently. And the one thing I want people to think about always as product managers is where's the demand? As PMs, whether we're in a time of coronavirus or whether it's 2019, we always have to look at where the demand is. It's a basic principle of product management, but every year demand changes, every month. It just happens so quickly today and so drastically. And one way to look at demand is through internet search trends. This is from Neil Patel's website, and he outlined that if you are in the news or financial space, traffic went up significantly and skyrocketed. But if you're in the travel industry, it went down. Massive drops in traffic. And you can't tell from this graph, but demand for really basic things like baby diapers went up a lot. But demand for luxury goods went down. So the consumer has now changed their spending habits and have redirected them into things that are more of a necessity. We also saw a trend of workforces needing to collaborate online. And this is Zoom's global daily meeting participants. What's crazy about Zoom is it's a business tool. If you compare it with Instagram, Instagram went from 100 million monthly active users in 2 years. Fortnite, which is a game, they went to 100 million monthly active users in 18 months. But Zoom went from 10 million to 200 million daily active users in 3 months. It's absolutely insane how many businesses and schools went into video conferencing. And Slack had a 20% increase in daily messages sent per user. But it's not just in businesses, but also in personal lives where we see people wanting to connect. House Party was the #1 app in the App Store in 17 countries, including UK, Spain, and Italy. And it's an app where you can go into a room and immediately talk and play with your friends. Demand for connection with other human beings is the same. It just changed into different ways. And we can see that in other industries like entertainment and diners still wanting to have the experience of eating out, but instead they're eating in. Netflix stock price during coronavirus actually went down a bit in March, but now it's one of the highest it's ever been. There's still demand for the same products and services. It's just redirected and now online. So how about something different? How about guitar classes? How do you think guitar classes can adapt to the new normal? Do you think there's still demand for guitar classes? Obviously, there's less demand, but it's still there. So Guitar Center is a great example of a company that moved, their lessons online early on during the pandemic. They have over 200 physical stores, but because they moved online, they saw 200% growth in online sales, and they've done 75,000 online lessons in the US. And they have 1,500 instructors waiting to teach aspiring music students. You can also see people who used to go to the gym, but now they're taking fitness classes at home. And the demand shifted from going to the gym to buying things like dumbbells. In Australia, it's actually pretty hard to find dumbbells because people have been buying this product a lot. In the education space, what you can see is 1.2 billion children out of the classroom. That's a huge, huge market for online education to come in. That's over like 180 plus countries. And products like Zoom weren't built for education. And we've actually are going to change education forever because of the pandemic. So I want you to also think about how can you target the growing online education market? It's an industry that's had to rapidly change so fast, and it's huge. A country that did that, a company that did that pretty well was Tencent. Last year, they launched Tencent Education, and in Wuhan, it resulted in the largest online movement with 730,000 K-12 students, which was 81% of their K-12 population, attending Tencent's K-12 online school. So it's pretty huge. And the Chinese government instructed full-time students to resume their studies online. So education is getting a huge boost, but restaurants are a bit different. This is from OpenTable, and you can see that demand for booking restaurants went down by a lot in several main US cities. So I have a question that I'm going to send out to the crowd. Imagine you owned a restaurant, maybe in Makati or BGC. What would you do? So you can type your answers in the chat. So if you owned a restaurant in the central business district, what would you do? And say the pandemic happened. Partner with delivery services, offer takeouts, awesome. Prioritize building delivery processes. Yeah, that would be a good one. So similar to delivery services, cloud kitchen. That's pretty cool, yeah. So those are actually quite similar examples of what other restaurants have done. They've offered curbside pickups, which is pretty similar to offering takeouts. Market to Grab or Food Panda. Yeah, definitely. And this one is an example of a restaurant near my where I live, and they've blocked the door with a QR code. And what you do is you scan the QR code, and it will launch a website where you can order, and then you can take your orders, and they will leave it to you at the table, and you're maintaining that social distancing. So these restaurants would have not been successful if they didn't adapt and they didn't go online, which is exactly what you guys have suggested. In another vein, you have big brands who used to advertise in magazines and in billboards, and now they're forced to come online. Advertising has changed so much because now people are just glued to their phones. So maybe you need to advertise on TikTok, on Snapchat. A lot of brick and mortar stores are now forced to understand the ways of digital advertising, which is completely different. I've seen music teachers try to say, oh my God, I have to make an ad because now no one's coming to my lessons. And they have to make online ads. So your advertising campaigns, not just your product, has to change too. And the reason that has to change is because customers now care about different things. Before, they didn't care about the safety or cleanliness of their product, but now it's a prime requirement. They want to have confidence and peace of mind that what they're going to get is going to be clean. So this is how Uber has done that, and they've done it in a really good way, where you can see the motorcycle driver have a face mask, and it shows social distancing. But not just in advertising, but in the way you deal with customers, you also want to see ways that you can engage with them. And you can see Facebook launching the care emoji. You can see the Matific team, giving their math product out for free. And in times of frustration is when you can actually create the best relationships with your customers, because people today are looking for that authentic connection with brands. At Canva, we looked at things like Zoom backgrounds, coronavirus templates, and they were a huge hit. So these were things that people were looking for. And then we created them, and then people started using them a lot. So overall, you can see a lot of great traits of successful companies. They're cloud-based. They've distributed their products in limited contact ways. It's always in demand. It's a product that's needed. They were digitally efficient, and they have an easily discoverable online presence. So in looking at your product, perhaps consider these traits and see if you can transform your business quickly in these 5 areas. But it's not just about the product, but also about the industry and market as a whole. I want you to think and consider about whether your market is growing or whether it's actually plateauing or declining. And it's really important as product managers that we look at things not just in the next 3 months, but in the next year and 5-year time horizons. Because what we invest in today is going to last that long. And you have to kind of predict the market based on signals and really think about how the market's looking. So one way to do that is by looking at GDP. This was the GDP of the US last year. It grew at a rate of 4.1%. In the first quarter of this year, it contracted by 4.8%. So it went down by a lot. And so looking at these types of market signals like GDP, you kind of can make a prediction of the future. And you want to use a very simple matrix that kind of lets you put all of this information in an easy way. And that's the simplified strategic condition matrix. Complicated name, but it's actually quite simple. All you have to do is think about where you are in the market. So are you an underdog? Meaning you actually have a lot of competitors and you don't really have a good product advantage. Are you just average? Meaning you have a bit of a competitive advantage, but you're easily influenced by a lot of Goliaths. And a Goliath is someone who either has a monopoly or is a top dog in the market. The reason this matters is it dictates how much market share you can get. So no matter how great your product is, if you have a lot of competitors, it's hard for you to win. And then you compare that against your industry. Is your industry growing quickly? Meaning it's growing faster than GDP? Or is it mature and aging, meaning it's actually growing slower than GDP? And what you kind of do is you figure out, based on this matrix, should you grow aggressively? So that's a check. Or should you really think about what you're doing? Or should you actually stop investing? If you're an underdog in a dying market, that's a really bad situation to be in. So maybe you shouldn't invest your resources there. As an example, this is for Canva video. Looking up the video editing industry, it's growing at a compounded annual growth rate of 12%. We're not the Goliath. Obviously, you've got Adobe, Pixar, Lumen 5, and a lot of great competitors. We're kind of average because we have the network of Canva, but we're also not dictating the industry. So it's a pretty good place to be in right now. So I challenge you guys to think about your industries, the place that you're in, the products that you're in. So I think there were people here who were from employment industries, people in financial industries. So think about your specific niche and how much that's growing. Now, especially since it's been affected by the pandemic. So with the video editing industry, we actually see more and more people using video because they're posting way more TikTok videos, they're posting way more Facebook videos, Instagram videos. And a lot of businesses are trying to put ads online, and these ads are in the form of videos. So in terms of how the Canva video market is doing, we're actually doing okay. So after you think about that, think about your industry, now you want to decide whether you're going to grow aggressively, you're going to find a niche, or you're going to have to stop this product. So I'm going to pause here and see if people have any questions so far, because we've covered a lot of the demand side. We've looked at how consumers are changing their demand. What if your industry's growth rate is at par with GDP's growth rate, but the GDP of the country is growing? Would you still consider this as growing? So the GDP of the country will have a pretty standard growth rate over the years, like the Philippines is 5.9%, Australia is 2.9%. So if your industry is in Australia, if it grows at around that growth rate, that means you're in a mature market, like it's okay. Also, there's other indicators of mature and growing markets. If you have a lot of competitors and it's hard to enter the market, that's already pretty mature. If you don't have a lot of competitors, and that's mostly like a growing market. Does that answer your question, Casper? Yeah, cool. Anyone else have questions? If not, we'll go to the second portion, which is how can I grow? So cool. You've kind of talked to customers. You've thought a lot about how demand is shifting. You know, maybe you work in a as a dentist and you thought about where your patients were shifting their demands. So now you want to think about how you can grow. And to do that, we have to look at some growth strategies. And a really simple way to think about growth is through the Ansoff Matrix, where you have new product, same market, and new market. So if you try to enter the same market with the same product, that's called market penetration. If you try to put your product but in a different market, like you want to launch in Russia, that's called market development. And if you want to put a different product but in the same market because you already know who they are, that's product development. And obviously you have increasing risk the farther away and more new things you try. So market penetration is a really good growth strategy during this pandemic. And we'll see some examples of big companies trying this. And let's take a look at a playoff between several video conferencing tools. It's a growing industry. We know that so many people are in this, but no one really has the monopoly yet. And imagine your Google Meet and you actually want to carve out the market. What do? You can type it in the chat. If you already know what Google Meet did, don't answer. So Google Meet is Google's video conferencing tool. So for people who don't know what they've done yet, you can type it in the chat what you think you would do. I feel like everyone knows this. If you guys are product managers, you should know this. Does anyone want to give it a go? Just winking faces and smiling faces. All right, if no one's trying, okay. So everyone probably knows what they did. They launched and made it free for everyone. So this is a pricing strategy where Zoom was offered. You have a limit at 40 minutes, and it's a subscription feature, so people have to pay. But the consumer today, they're cheap. They don't want to spend money. Saving rates are the highest it's ever been for a very, very long time. And people don't really want to pay for products. So Google Meet's strategy of offering it for free is actually really, really smart. And another player in the game is Messenger. They introduced Messenger Rooms, and this is also for free. So actually Zoom has a lot of competition, and they're all trying to carve out different parts of the market. So it's really exciting to see who's going to win at the end of the day. Will there be a monopoly, or is it all going to be kind of scattered? Another area that's growing is the video game market. So we're looking at same products launching in the same market. And so web traffic up related to video games grew by 75%. Video streaming went up by 12%. Nintendo Switch saw sales go up by 150%. And now 80% of all games are sold digitally. Huge. And Facebook has always had games, and they wanted a larger piece of the pie. 700 million of Facebook users play games on the platform, and now more and more people are using it. And this industry is so big, it's $120 billion big. So Facebook had to rapidly move in and launch Facebook Gaming to try to capture their own market of people who are already playing games on Facebook and to stop them from using other places like Twitch to stream. Another great example of a more traditional market penetration strategy is with Under Armour. 10 years ago, people had no idea who Under Armour was. You got Nike, you got Adidas, really big names. So they were quite the underdog in an industry that wasn't really growing so fast. It's kind of the lifestyle industry. But what they did was they had a really strong promotional market penetration strategy, which means that it's not really much about their product, but in the way they advertised it. They partnered with celebrity athletes, professional teams, college athletic teams, people who were really modern and kind of like popular. And this strategy allowed them to eat more share of the lifestyle fitness market. And now they're number 2 in the US, number 2, which is huge. And you can actually do something similar because now online channels are so cheap. For $100, $50, you can advertise to pretty much anyone in the world through Facebook, through Snapchat, Instagram ads. It's literally at your fingertips. And you can quickly change your product perception through these ads. And those were examples of market penetration. So let's take a look at market development. How can you actually switch to a new market? Traditionally, this has always been done through market positioning. In the Philippines, Safeguard is this kind of soap that would always advertise itself as, low cost, saves you from sickness, and that was pretty much it. In Australia, if you want to sell something, you have to put 99% Australian ingredients, cruelty-free, like all of those good stuff. So the way consumers look at products is so different, and you have to think about that when you launch to a new market. A good example of being able to enter a new market now in this pandemic is the Feel Good Clinic. They're a psychology counseling, physical kind of shop near Surrey Hills in Sydney. And what they've done is they started offering telehealth services, meaning you can actually go and talk to a counselor without having to go to their office. It's really cool because I pretended to be a client and I asked, I'm based in Manila, can I have a session? And they were like, yep, that's totally fine. So this clinic has changed, and their market is no longer the people who live in Surrey Hills, but it's now the whole world. And if they put some advertising behind that, they can actually target anyone in the world, which is pretty cool. So think about how you can expand your product or service globally now that everybody's online, and you can target anyone. Zoom wasn't meant for businesses, wasn't meant for schools, but they actually expanded to education by making their product, expanding their product features for students and teachers and offering a bit more things for free because they didn't want to lose that market. So that's how they entered the education market. And one awesome and local example I'm about to share is one in the delivery business. So we all know how popular companies like HelloFresh is. Their shares went up by 14%. In the Philippines, you have a startup called Zagana, and they first targeted restaurants and offered, fresh produce for restaurants. So they were doing B2B. But because of what happened in the pandemic, they decided to shift their market and started targeting consumers, and they saw their sales go up. So they're doing quite well today. And that's a really classic example of how you can use the same product but shift to a new market. So I kind of challenge you guys to think about how you can take your product and think about a different market, whether that's another country, whether that's a different demographic. There may be markets that have more demand for what you're offering than your current market today, because you're probably seeing less demand for your product. And obviously, the last growth strategy is product development. And something that I'm really amazed at is how, the healthcare industry is really growing. And what product development is all about is kind of like thinking of new products to sell to the same market. So in the UAE, they launched the first virtual hospital. In China, telehealth has been growing so rapidly because people were all locked down, but they wanted to talk to a doctor. So they would have like these apps where they can talk to the doctor. And in Abu Dhabi, you can see that they're offering medical advice over the phone call. If you're a mother and you want to know if your baby is okay, you can call them. If you have a sore throat and you kind of know if you want coronavirus, you can call them. So they're offering a different product, which is remote, but catering to the same market. A great example is the Stand Studio based in Sydney, and they had a product and service which was where you go into a dance studio, you have a great feel of community, you go and attend a dance class. But obviously, you can't do that now. You can't have 20 people in a hot, sweaty room, everyone dancing. So instead, they offered it over Zoom. And what I've heard about dance classes is that sometimes it can go up to 100 people, and that's sometimes a good thing for people who are afraid of dancing, because then no one's going to notice you dance. So it might actually be a really good way to introduce a new product, which is a dance class where no one can see you dance. And I'm sure there's a market for that. At Canva, we launched a new product, Zoom Backgrounds, because we saw the number of people who were on Zoom. We also launched Canva Print, because we saw that people were making flyers and posters and designing them on Canva. So why not offer them a new product, which is the ability for them to print it? So I challenge you guys to think about, your customers, your market, but is there a new product that you can actually sell to them that fits with their current realities today, now that we're in a pandemic? But, sadly, not all businesses can retain demand. Examples like Ryanair, Lufthansa, British Airways, Air France, they've shed like 32,000 jobs because the industry is contracting and it will take years to recover. So you actually have to be aware of where your industry is going, how far has it been affected by the pandemic, and you have to make a guess at how long that contraction will take if you're not in a growing industry. So Lufthansa has already placed 80,000 of their staff on reduced working hours. Ryanair has cut it by 3,000. And we're predicting that the global passenger industry is going to go down by as much as 55%. So that's an industry you don't really want to be in today. So I have a question for everyone. And that's, what are examples of other industries that actually have been killed by coronavirus? You can put your answers in the chat. Fashion. Really? Do you think fashion has been killed? Travel, yes, for sure. Travel agencies, yes. Personal services. What's a like massages? Hospitality. Yes, hotel industries. Definitely lower demand for that. Accommodation. Yeah, same with hospitality. Yeah, that's a good one. Film industry. Yeah, film industry has taken a hit. If you're talking about physical theaters, but there's actually a lot of ways that they can still deliver their product to customers. Uh, Leisure. What do you mean by leisure? Live house, live entertainment, concerts, public shows. Are you sure? There's a lot of How can you deliver live entertainment now? I think you can think of some ways to deliver live entertainment. Bowling alleys, that's really specific. Yeah, the industry for bowling alleys is growing at this percent a year. That's a good one. How would, if you were a bowling alley, what would you do? Oh, videoke bars. The yeah, yeah. I think videoke is still big, but maybe not videoke bars. So actually, with bowling alley, if you were a bowling alley company, how would you respond to coronavirus? Type your ideas. F&B, food and beverage. Yep. Tourism. Yeah. Let's try the bowling alley example. I would you'd sell coupons, but people wouldn't be allowed to go into your bowling alley. Yes. Yes, digital advertising has taken a hit. Yup, brands want to be associated with the current situation or more careful with their messaging. That's true. They want to be careful, but also consumers are looking for brands to connect with them and also acknowledge the situation. So it's also kind of a bad thing if brands totally disregard that. Certificates for post COVID. Yes, oil. Oil has definitely crashed insanely. Digital bowling app, that's a really good idea. Ask if my bowling space could be used for something different like storage. That's a great one. Completely pivot your bowling alley into a warehouse facility. Booking reservations after ECQ for bowling. We bowling tournaments. That's a cute one. Sell the bowling alley. Alexis has completely given up. He's like, there's no growth in this industry. Sell, yeah, bowling supplies. That's not a bad one. Maybe start selling bowl at home experiences. You guys have sell it to a grocery store. That's a good one. Sell your bowling alley to a grocery store. You guys are really creative. Anyone else have crazy ideas for a bowling alley? Convert it to a coronavirus clinic. Great. If some malls are already opening up. So in Australia, it's a bit different from the Philippines. You're allowed to go into malls. It's not pure lockdown. So as a bowling alley, you could close every other lane and try to sell it that way. Rent it for ECQ patients. You guys are hilarious. All right. So yes, we've totally tackled all the solutions possible for a bowling alley company. Um, So that was actually the end of my talk, and I wanted to do a quick recap of what we covered. And that's really thinking about where the demand is. As product managers, we should never stop thinking about this. Always have a pulse on the market. Always be talking to your customers to know what they care about. We covered the simplified strategic condition matrix, which forces you to think about the industry as a whole and your position against competitors, so you know how to play the game. We looked at different growth strategies and looked at three of them: market penetration, going in the same market with the same product; market development, the same market, new market with the same product; and product development, same market, new product. I'm going to end with this quote, which says, COVID-19 has upended our modern lives in ways we're just starting to understand. And it was Bond Capital who said this. And the reason I really like this is because Bond Capital, they do have so much resources reading the market. Mary Meeker leads Bond Capital. And even if you have all these smart people looking at the market, they also still don't know the market that well. They can't predict it. So everyone is on the same boat. And that was it. I hope everybody had fun. And if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat and I'll do my best to answer them. Oh, thanks, Paul. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Jude. Any tips for what to do in my bowling alley? I think we
Yeah.
had a lot of great ideas up there. Yeah?
Yeah, I think so. And thanks as well. I think you shared a lot of insights, Joanne, and yeah, it's very insightful. And I really like your how you ended your presentation, because this is something new, especially in our generation. And right now we're still trying to figure out like how we're gonna adapt to these stuff. Like people are trying, all of us are trying, and how we can strategize our growth, how we're gonna position the market, how we're gonna develop our products, how we're gonna develop bowling alleys and repurpose them as well. So yeah, I guess from a stand from s- I guess from a product standpoint as well, we are yet to rewrite the books on how this has been affecting it, and I'm pretty sure decades from now, like a lot of people are gonna look back how companies and how people have been adapting to this. What are the different strategies that we did? Okay, yeah, I guess we can run through some questions as well. Um, Let me help you. Oh, you want to answer the question on the bowling alley? Any tips for what to do with my bowling alley from Phil?
Phil, do you have a bowling alley? I think everyone had some great answers up there. Um, Honestly, I think people are not gonna have a huge rush back to entertainment because a lot of people have lost their jobs, so there's not a lot of, expendable money for them to spend on things that are not exactly necessity. So I would obviously shut down the bowling alley. That's what I would do, and try to divest it completely. I don't think bowling alley is a growing industry. It's not even something I suggest you should be in. Very high cost, high service.
Yeah, I agree. Even from a hygienic standpoint, like
Oh yeah,
imagine using the house balls. Like
yeah,
imagine having to disinfect all of those.
you're sharing, yeah, balls with people.
Yeah, exactly.
That was awkward. Yeah. Um,
Casper has a question. So Jollibee sells frozen chicken here in the Philippines. Is it counted as product development?
yes, selling frozen chicken, that is product development. And I didn't know they were selling frozen chicken. They actually need that as an export business, for OFWs who want Jollibee fried chicken. That's also a market for Jollibee.
Gotcha.
Yeah, KFC.
Yes, we should do that as well. Well, a lot of restaurants here in the Philippines have been doing
Airbnb
that
strategy on
in terms of
COVID.
pivoting as well. So I guess that's a good idea. Any thoughts on Airbnb strategy and COVID?
Yes, I'm not familiar with Airbnb strategy on COVID. Can you expound on what that was? You can also talk if you prefer on Airbnb strategy.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi. Paul
Hello.
here. Hi. Hello. Oh yeah. So basically, Airbnbs. I think, one of the companies got hit about COVID, right? So,
Hmm.
recently I just found like a news, heard from TechCrunch that they just pivoted to, um, online experiences, such as, you can book like a teacher where you can teach you how to play music, also teach you how to cook. Also,
Mm,
they shifted their product to like a monthly rental for COVID
mm.
frontliners. Like for example, if you have a condo in Makati, um, you can, rent it out for like just for a month for COVID frontliners, something like that. So
Yeah, actually, they're actually pretty smart with the experiences section because they already have the platform for people to connect with experiences, but they just marketed it in a travel way. Like you all have the tech, the UI there. So it's really smart of them to to pivot to online classes and education because that's essentially what the experiences product was trying to do. I think I tried an Airbnb experience product before, and it was like cooking, or it was like go and see the site somewhere. So I think that's pretty smart. With their monthly rentals, I think that's good, and then they're in the right direction. I would, if I were them, actually try to explore competing with local rental apps. Like for instance, in Australia, we have Domain, where people can put up their rental places, and people can find places to rent, and you can see the price of your rent, and you can find, locations. Looks and acts exactly almost the same as Airbnb. And a lot of the Airbnb actually houses have posted on that app locally here because they couldn't get people through Airbnb. So it's the same product, you're having a place to stay, except now you're catering to people who are looking for more long-term rent. And for Airbnb, that's going to be like a very interesting space that I think they should look into, because the travel industry, it's not going to bounce back to the same level in a couple of years. That's what I think. Obviously, I'm not the CEO of Airbnb, and I don't know this industry so well. Yeah. Um, what are other ways of gauging market demand aside from checking GDP growth or industry CAGR? So that's actually a great question. So because we're in tech, we already have all these tools available for us to check demand. So I use a tool called SEMrush, and that lets me actually search for specific keywords and see how many people are searching for that keyword. Because Google is the gateway to the internet, what people search for in Google is, might even be a great gauge or a better gauge than GDP, which is always like a quarter delayed. You could look at the growth of your competitors. Yeah, that's a good one. If you don't have competitors, I think that's actually a bad thing. It means there's actually no demand, and no one has actually entered that market, unless you have like a killer idea and you're carving out your own market, which is quite rare. I hope that answered your question, Isa. Yeah, double cost. So Sujud said in Indonesia, fast food restaurants serve frozen food and a la carte food with good packaging. That's actually like pretty smart, especially since there's a lot of demand for frozen canned goods. If you can get it at the way the restaurants, like a restaurant quality frozen good, that's actually pretty smart. Yeah. Anyone else have questions? These are great. It looks like we're all good.
Okay. Any more questions so far?
Yeah, thanks for coming, Phil. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. If there are no more questions, yeah. Again, I'd like to thank you, Joanne, for sharing with us tonight's talk as well. And yeah, probably you can share if ever people want to reach out to you or if they have any questions. Probably you can share some channels where they can reach you.
Yes, you can add me on LinkedIn. I literally add almost everyone. Yeah, so add me on LinkedIn. I'll add you back. And thanks for coming. And I hope you guys learned some insights today. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for spending this hour with me. Woo! Thanks
Yeah,
so much.
definitely. Thanks so much, Joanne.
Yeah.
Yeah, really insightful. And I'd like to thank my fellow organizers as well, Yana, Jan, Casper, Ian, and Jason for organizing tonight's event. Um, and if you want to join the community, let me share real quick.
Yeah,
Share.
huge kudos to, Product Page for organizing.
Yeah, we're more than welcome to have you, Joanne. And yeah, so I guess for if you want to join our future events and if you just want to, you know, cut into the engagement, have a chat or anything, feel free to join us on our Facebook group. It's facebook.com/groups/productph, or you can watch out for our events on meetup.com as well. Okay, that's about it. Thanks again, everyone, for attending. Joanne, thank you again for your presentation. Really appreciate it.
Sure thing. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you around.
All right, take care. Stay safe, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.